Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you to all today's webinar conducted by Online Tax Update. A brief about Online Tax Update is it is a website which shares recent update in GST, GST Council meeting, budget, etc. It has a note section as well where GST law is presented in a simple language for easy understanding and simple learning of GST law. We also share newsletter on a nominal fees. We'll share the link in the PPT as well as in the YouTube link. Today's topic of the webinar is how to handle GST appeal effectively. So it becomes a very important topic where there are many disputes between the taxpayers and the GST department. And our today's faculty is Mr. CA Mohit Gupta sir. He is also an advocate. And his brief introduction about himself is he is a practicing chartered accountant and lawyer. He is a co-opted member of Indirect Tax Committee of NIRC of ICAI. He is involved in the transaction advisory practice, having rich experience of several years of working in top tier indirect taxation advisory firms of India, APRA and Associates, and Lakshmi Kumar and Sridharan, LKS. He is a two-time rank holder of CA Institute examination and has also been actively involved in various conventions and conferences of ICAI. He has been advising client on a wide range of indirect tax matters, including GST, service tax, customs, foreign trade policy, PLI, and legal metrology law. He has worked with clients in various industries like real estate, infrastructure sector, iron and steel, automobile, consumer durables, FMCG, consumer electronic, startup, etc. He is also a GST trainer faculty of ICI. He has been giving seminars, webinars on various platforms from past several years. He has also given various training sessions in corporates and trained various professionals. He has authored numerous books on various topics under GST, service tax, and VAT. We welcome Mohit Gupta sir, and we first of all thank you for taking out your time from busy schedule and addressing our audience on the topic how to handle GST appeal effectively. Over to you, Mohit Gupta sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ganeshan.
Yes.
First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Ganeshan as well as the team of Online Tax Update to organize this webinar. And the biggest thanks is always due to the audience for taking out their time and coming to attend this session. So when me and Ganeshan were having a discussion that what should be the topic for this webinar, so I think we felt very strongly that one of the problem areas which a lot of professionals are facing is how to handle the appeals, because there are a lot of appeals. Most of them are on some specific topics. Then there are some appeals who are on very different topics. But every professional is facing a lot of issues in specifically in how to approach a appeal, how to draft a appeal, how to go about researching, how to go uh, to the judgments, how to see the jurisprudence, how to see the facts, how to see the notices, how to draft the technical grounds apart from the merit ground, how technical ground has to be taken. Then there are some concepts like payment under protest, which are not specifically given in the law, but they are a very important concept. So there is a lot of confusion on that as well. So basic agenda of today's session is to have a very open discussion on what are the various aspects of appeal drafting and other aspects apart from drafting also, which has to be taken care in mind when you draft a appeal, and how to improve this basic process. So we'll be taking some examples to have a better understanding, but the basic idea is not to go deep dive into those examples. Like if you're talking about 2A 3B or 1 3B, so basic idea is not that you are learning how to draft 2A versus 3B notice. Basic idea is to learn the general principles which are important for drafting an appeal, so that those general principles can be applied to any appeal, and that will improve the quality of drafts which you are working on. So the major topics which I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible, sir. PPT is we can see.
So the major topics which we will be covering today. So these two major examples we will be taking: 2A 3B mismatch, 1 and 3B mismatch, and apart from that, we'll also take some other common issues to understand the basic principles of appeal drafting and research. And then some specific aspects of appeal which we'll be taking up are penalty, payment under protest, pre-deposit, and other common issues which has to be looked while drafting an appeal. So my only request to the audience is to keep the chat box very active. Anyone has any doubt which they want to discuss, so they should just type it straight away into the chat box, and I'll try to answer it as soon as possible. So with this request, let us move ahead into the session. So the first and foremost requirement when you receive a appeal or notice or any legal communication from the tax department. So the first and foremost requirement is to understand the facts of the case. So if I take an example that if you receive a notice for 2A versus 3B, that there is a mismatch of 2A versus 3B, so then straight away a lot of professionals I've seen that they just receive this notice and they start drafting, okay, this is the ground, this is the ground, this is the case, this is the case. But that is not the correct way. So first of all, when you have to do a deep dive into the facts of the case. So if I take an example of 2A versus 3B, then first you have to see what was the actual 3B which was filed by the taxpayer. In a lot of cases we have seen that the figures which are mentioned in the notice, so let's say in notice it is mentioned that in 2A your 90 rupees are coming, in 3B 100 rupees are coming, but when we actually see the GST 3B on portal 3B also contains 90 rupees. So because a lot of notices these days are generated from the back end, so there are a lot of possibilities of errors also. So first of all, whether all the factual figures which are given in the notice is correct or not. Then what is the actual factual position? So you have to check all your records, including your GSTR 2A, your GSTR 3B, or your other returns. If it is a 1 versus 3B notice, then what is mentioned in your GSTR 1? Or if it is some reconciliation between your financial statements, then what is there in your financial statements, whether they have been audited or not, and how have you disclosed it in GSTR 9 or 9C. So first of all, you have to do a very deep dive into those specific facts and see what is the actual factual position. And a golden principle which we always follow for when we discuss on the facts is never take anything which client says on their face value. Because a lot of time when you discuss a long case with a client, a lot of things they will communicate with you verbally, but when you actually go and see the documents, the story will be completely different. So each and every verbal assertion which has been made by the client, so you have to go and see each and every document to verify those assertions. Because a lot of times you will find practically that what is being communicated verbally is different from what is actually there on the documents. And obviously, when you go to department or you go to court for that matter, what is written in documents will prevail, not what the client has communicated to you verbally. And then in a lot of cases, you might also have to check those facts with third parties. So again, taking example of 2A versus 3B. So in 2A versus 3B, let's say there is a particular invoice which is not coming in your GST or 2A. Then you have to coordinate with your supplier and check what is the actual reason this particular invoice is not coming in 2A. So that might be because that your supplier has declared the invoice but mentioned the wrong GST number of some other person, or maybe it has been shown as B2C supplier, or maybe it has not been shown in GSTR 1 but tax has been paid in GSTR 3B. So unless and until all these things are clear, you cannot move forward. So in a lot of cases, like we have received notices of 1 and 3B mismatch, that in GSTR 1 you have declared 100 rupees, in 3B you have paid 80 rupees. So 20 rupees you have to pay the tax. So then, but when we later on got into the facts, so we realized that okay, that 20 rupees which was excess disclosed in GSTR 1, that is a exempt income, or that is a non-supply, or maybe some sale of land which is not a supply as per Schedule 3. So whenever you receive these kind of notices, first of all you have to check what is the actual factual position, and then have a proper draft. So whenever you start drafting a appeal, first part is always the facts, that you have to give a brief overview of all the facts which are there. So understand the facts and draft the facts. So that completes your step one of drafting an appeal. Then the second most is important step, and I think this is a step wherein a lot of professionals also they do not devote as much time as is required in this particular step. So when we talk about the facts of a case, so that is also divided into two types. So first is the technical facts, that if 2A 3B notice has come, then what is there in 2A, whether it has been claimed in 3B, what are the invoices, invoice details, what supplier has done. All those are technical side of the facts. Then second is the documentation aspect from department end. So in this, what do we specifically have to check is the complete trail of documents which has been there from day one when we received any notice or any communication from the department till the date when you are drafting the appeal. So what is the complete trail of documents from those from between these two dates? Whenever I receive a notice or I have to draft a appeal, the first thing I do is I take out my diary, I take out a plain page, and I see all the documents, and I just start writing all the dates and trail. That okay, on this date we received this notice from the department. On this date we received a reminder. On this date we gave them a reply. Then on this date they issued a second document list, and then this date they issued a show cause notice, DRC 1A, then order. So on a just plain one single page of paper, I write all the complete trail so that I have a good idea that okay, when the case started, when the and till now, what is the actual position of the case. And this becomes very important when you're dealing with the timelines. That when you have to see whether a particular notice or the order is time barred or not, whether it is within the time limit of 73 but not under 74. So when you are checking all those things, you need to have that summary readily available, wherein all the dates with the list of communication that okay, on this date this is the communication, that should be readily available. In a lot of cases, if you see the history of C-stat judgments in service tax and excise, in so many cases I have seen, in so many cases we have argued before the tribunal, we have seen that the tribunal has closed the case only on the ground of limitation, that fraud and suppression and intent, malified intent cannot be satisfied by the department. So we do not even need to go into the merit of the case, and this case is time barred under fraud section, which was 73(3) in service tax, and then it is 74 in GST. So that becomes very important, and for that you have to see the complete chain of documents. That okay, this is this how these documents came, then how these documents came. So delivery of notice, delivery of department communication is very important. In a lot of cases, we have seen that the client is receiving notices on WhatsApp number or maybe on email from some personal email ID which is not or does not have the domain .gov.in, because only the official ID have these domain of gov.in, and any personal email ID from which you have received a mail from Gmail or any other email ID, they are not authorized government IDs. So any emails which you are receiving from them, that is not a proper mode of communication, and any requirement, any notice which you have received from those IDs, you can straight away ignore those communication, because that is not a valid mode of communication which is provided in the CGST Act. Then again, UDIN is again a very important aspect, that every communication which is issued by the central officers under CGST, they have to have a unique document identification number, otherwise they are not valid. So you don't even need to reply to those notices. It is deemed that those notices are invalid, and the associate does not have any need to reply to those notices. Then again, timelines. So timelines, like we discussed earlier, when you have that complete chain of documents along with the dates, so first thing you need to see is the timeline. That okay, what was the timeline, when was the case started? So if I take example of audit, the audit under section 65, that has to be completed in within 3 months from date of commencement of the audit. So whether that 3 months time period was adhered to or not, whether the proper audit report in form ADT2 was properly issued or not, within proper time or not. So all those things you need to see when you start studying a case. Then another very important aspect which is missing in a lot of cases we see these days is the provisions which are violated are not specifically mentioned in the notice. So if I take example of GST at 2A versus 3B, so in a lot of notices we have seen that it is just one liner or two liner notice in which it is only mentioned that there is a difference between 2 and 3B, and due to that there is a demand of 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 1 crores, etc. on the assessee, but nowhere in the notice. So, see, basically, what do you understand by a notice? A show cause notice is the base foundation of any case. So, a show cause notice is supposed to have all the facts, all the allegations which are levied by the department, and the law which is violated by the assessee. So, the department is required to mention the specific section, subsection, rule, notification which is violated by the assessee. So just merely writing that there is a mismatch in 2A 3B due to which there is a demand liability of 1 crore, or there is a mismatch in 1 and 3B due to which there is a liability of 50 lakhs. So that is not allowed at all. The department is required to go into the detail of the case. They have to investigate the case, bring out all the facts, and then mention the exact provision which has been violated by the assessee. If they have not mentioned those things in the show cause notice, then that show cause notice is null and void. You can directly approach the High Court in this case, and they will directly quash the show cause notice. Then, if the department is invoking Section 74, saying that this is a case of fraudulent and fraud and suppression and willful misstatement, then what are the grounds which are taken by the department? So, in a lot of notices and orders, we have seen the department has that standard language that GST is a self-assessment law. So, any non-compliance or any short payment, non-payment which has been done by the assessee, that is on the basis of his own ascertainment, and due to which it is treated that assessee has deliberately not made this payment because it is self-assessment based. So the liability has a penalty has to be levied under Section 74, which is a completely ridiculous ground, because if we apply that ground, then each and every case would be under Section 74, because for all the cases that is under self-assessment scheme under GST. So whether the specific grounds are mentioned for the invocation of Section 74, if the specific grounds are not mentioned, then the case cannot proceed under Section 74. And at a maybe at a first appeal level, but definitely at a tribunal level, there is a very good chance that the assessee will get this relief and get Section 74 dropped from the notice. And we'll discuss in later part of the session that how do you distinguish between Section 73 and 74, and some common example where Section 74 cannot be invoked. Then section under which the notice has been issued, whether that has been mentioned or not. So in a lot of cases, we have seen that the show cause notice is, in the subject of the show cause notice, it is written show cause notice issued under Section 73 oblique Section 74. So it is very important that the department has to mention the specific section in which that notice has been issued. So a show cause notice has to be issued either under Section 73 or under Section 74. They cannot just write Section 73 oblique 74 in the subject of the show cause notice, because show cause notice is the first document which the assessee gets to defend itself. So if you're writing that this notice has been issued under 73 oblique 74, then assessee does not know under which section the notice has been issued. And if the assessee does not know that, how is the assessee supposed to defend itself? It is not possible for the assessee. And later on, in those cases, we have seen that the orders are being confirmed under Section 74. So that is a blatant misuse of power, because in notice, if you're not mentioning that it is under Section 74 and the grounds are not mentioned, that what is the reason because of which the department is invoking Section 74, then in order you cannot confirm the penalty under Section 74. Then nature of offense, that what is the actual nature, what is the actual violation which has been committed by the assessee. So in a lot of cases, we have seen that just department gives a one or two liners in the show cause that there is a discrepancy in 1 and 3B, due to which there is a demand of 50 lakh rupees. So that is not a valid notice, because the department has to bring out the actual violation of law which has taken place. If there is a difference in 1 and 3B, that can be on account of genuine differences. Maybe something which is disclosed in GSTL1 is not taxable, or maybe that is a timing difference that was paid later on in some subsequent 3B or through DRC3 or in GSTL9 or in some any other manner. So department has to bring out those facts and only then it can issue a show cause notice. So especially these practice we have seen near the due date of show cause notice. So whenever a due date is coming in, department has a lot of backlog of cases. So they just start issuing show cause notice left and right without going into too much details. And all such notices are bound to be quashed when they go up to the tribunal or high court level. That I can guarantee you. Then whether the replies given by the taxpayer are considered or not. So in a lot of orders, in a lot of show cause notices, we have seen that the department brings out its allegations. Then, so let's say there is a show cause notice on 2A versus 3B. So me being a taxpayer, I have received the notice from the department. I gave a reply to them countering each and every allegation which they leveled in the show cause notice. And then, and when the order comes, in the order, they will just repeat what they have said in the show cause notice. They will refer to my reply and they will just mention the reply found by assessee was not satisfactory, and therefore I propose to confirm the demand on all the points which are mentioned in show cause notice. So that is not the correct way. So the department has to give a reasoned order, a speaking order. So what does that mean is the department first has to bring out all the facts, then they have to bring out all the allegations which are leveled by the department, then they have to bring out the reply which is given by the taxpayer and counter each and every point in those reply. That okay, in this reply, the taxpayer has his 10 points. So okay, on this point, I does not accept this point because of so reason, this point because of so reason. So for each and every point which has been given by the assessor in its reply, they have to give a counter. Otherwise, they cannot reject that reply outright on the ground that I do not find this satisfactory. And in a lot of cases, we have seen that they do not even refer to the reply. So even if the assessee has given reply, maybe to ASMT 10 or maybe to show cause notice, in the subsequent communication, they just confirm the demand and do not refer to that reply at all. So even in those kind of cases, the assessee can directly approach High Court because there has been a gross violation of principles of natural justice. Because the assessee has not been heard. Assessee has given the reply, but that has not been considered by the department when they are issuing the order. And then again, on similar lines, the next important ground is whether the proper opportunity of being heard has been given or not. So this you would have seen especially in the cases of e-way bill, when that complete communication of MOV1, MOV2, they take usually 1 or 2 or 3 days. But when we come to MOV5 and MOV7, which are basically the show cause notices and order, so they are issued within a very short span. So maybe show cause notice will be issued at 3 p.m. Then order will, in some cases, order is also issued at 3 p.m. So in show cause notice, they mentioned that these are the allegations. Please show cause why you should not be levied penalty. Then immediately within 1 minute, order is also issued. So that is very clearly evident that opportunity of being heard has not been given. And it is clearly given in the law that if you're passing an adverse order, department has to give opportunity of being heard to the assessee, even if assessee has not asked specifically for that opportunity. And it is mandated upon them to give that opportunity. And even if assessee is not able to come to that hearing, they are bound to give at least 3 adjournments before finally deciding the case. But in EV bill cases, they're deciding that that whole process is getting wrapped within 1 minute. So that is how fast department has become. But that is not sustainable, and that is a blatant misuse of powers again by the department because they are not giving a proper opportunity to the taxpayer. So basically these are the things you have to check when you receive a notice and the technical aspects of it. So going into the merit is obviously you have to go into the merit that okay, this is a 2A versus 3B, 1 versus 3B, EV bill versus 3B, or some other taxability, exemption, ITC eligibility. So technical grounds have to be there, and they are prepared by almost every professional. But what we use as professionals, what we usually miss out on the technical aspect. that whether the notices are time barred or not, whether proper opportunity has been given, whether the replies has been considered. So these grounds also become very important when you go into the higher stage of litigation. Because if you go into the tribunal or high court or supreme court, in a lot of cases you will win cases just on the base of these technical grounds without going into the merits at all. So then, next question which comes is the position of the law. So now you have understood the facts, you have understood the notices, the sequence of the notices, and all those things. Now the next question, which next step which has to be done before drafting the appeal, is understanding the position of the law. Okay, now this is the fact whether the assessor is actually liable to pay tax on this or not, or what is the actual position of the law, whether this is a fightable case or not. So with that, obviously, first step is to see the legal provisions. So that includes your GST Act, GST rules, GST notification, any circular, any other clarification which has been issued by the department within the GST law, and see whether, as per those provisions, the assessor is liable to pay tax or not. So one very important aspect which has to be seen in this is the amendments in a particular provision. So if I take an example like repair of motor vehicle. So let's say the assessee receives a notice for ITC. The assessee received some repair services for his motor vehicle, four-wheeler car, in December 2018, and he has taken ITC on such services. And later on, the department gives him a show cause notice saying that that is not allowed. So if you see the provision today, there is a specific provision under section 17(5), subclause AA and AB, which specifically disallows the repair services ITC for motor vehicle. But if you see the law which prevailed in December 2018, then that specific subsection, that specific provision was not there. So whenever we are seeing the position of the law, we have to see what law was prevailing at the time when such action, when such ITC availment, or whether when such short payment was actually there. So at that point of time, what was the actual position of the law? So that position we have to see, and then we have to see a subsequent amendments. That okay, if that law has been subsequently amended, then that amendment may also have an impact on the previous position. So if I take example of 2A versus 3B, so earlier there was no provision in GST law which says that the ITC has to come in your GST 2A or 2B to get the credit. But then with effect from 1st January 2022, section 16(2) clause AA was introduced, which provides that the ITC has to be declared in GST 1 and reflect in 2A 2B to get the credit. So that provision was specifically inserted from 1st January 2022. For all the cases before 1st January 22, we can take a ground that okay, there was no provision in GST law before January 22. So any notice before that on the dispute of 2A versus 3B is not valid because there was no provision in GST Act itself. So that is how even a subsequent amendment can have an impact on the issue which came before the period of the amendment. And then obviously next step is finding the jurisprudence, your case laws, your high court judgments, supreme court judgments, tribunal judgments, advanced rulings on the subject matter in which you are arguing. So here one very important aspect which I would like to highlight is usually we restrict ourselves to the law we are working on. So we are working for the matter in GST Act. We will only look within the judgments on within the GST regime. But that is not necessary that all the relevant law is there in GST judgments only. So, for example, the GST has developed from service tax, excise, customs, and VAT. So, any judgment which is there in those laws and where the provisions were same, so that will also become relevant to us in GST. So, for example, if you take any judgment on place of supply, so earlier in service tax we had place of provision of services. So basically, they are almost identical to the place of supply provisions which are given in GST. So any judgment which is there in there on those place of provision rules and service tax, they will be relevant in GST also. Or if I talk about VAT, then if we talk about 2A 3B mismatch, So earlier in VAT also in a lot of states there were concepts of matching. So either on an invoice wise level or on a vendor wise level, some states had that concept wherein the ITC had to be matched. So in Delhi we have a landmark judgment of Arise India, which was later on found by the Supreme Court, wherein they have given a very good relief that if you basically they have said that if the recipient has paid tax to the seller, uh, then the seller is liable to pay tax and recovery cannot be made from the recipient, but that is subject to the condition that a statement of supplier and the recipient is matching. So if I translate it into GST, then maybe we can take a ground that when a particular invoice is coming in GST at 2A of the recipient, but the supplier has not paid tax, then the credit cannot be denied to the supplier. Oh, sorry, to the recipient. Because in a lot of cases, the department is also issuing these notices that, okay, even if a particular invoice is coming in your 2A, but because your supplier has not filed 3B, you are not eligible to avail ITC. So those kind of cases can be countered by the judgment of Arise India, which is a very important and significant judgment. And there are some other judgments also on basis of which we can argue the 2A, 3B part. But all those judgments are in the other laws other than GST. So, analyzing those judgments, reading those judgments also becomes relevant when you are preparing a case in GST law. And it is not just restricted to the previous indirect tax laws. So even income tax becomes relevant, because if you see concepts like search, seizure, assessment, summons, inspection, so a lot of those concepts are available in income tax law also, and income tax is much older than GST or service tax or customs. So in that case, even the judgments under Income Tax Act can become very relevant for a case which you are preparing in GST, or even other acts other than income tax. So in a lot of cases, like we were preparing a case for taxability of development rights, land development rights called TDR, transfer of development rights. So when we were researching for that particular case in GST for GST taxability, we also went and saw the judgments in civil law that okay, because those complete regulation is done under Transfer of Property Act. So we saw the judgments which are passed under Transfer of Property Act. Okay, then what are the jurisprudence in that particular law? How they treat these development rights, and same ground and same analogy we have tried to take in GST. So that is how wide law is when you start in researching when you start researching the judgments under any particular subject matter. So you have to go out from the ambit of a particular act. First of all, you have to see the GST Act, but after that, you have to see in all the other possible acts in which there can be judgments on a similar subject matter and which has similar provisions or similar intent. And then obviously next is the judgments outside India. So right now we have only talked about the judgments within India, but even the judgments which are passed by authorities outside India are very relevant. So a lot of law which is there in Indian GST that has been taken from Australian GST or UK VAT or EU VAT. So even when we are doing some drafting on taxability or the schedule 5 of para 5 of schedule 2 to declared services, so those concepts are there in other GST laws of other country. So even the judgments in those countries become relevant. So they are not binding on Indian courts, but they have a very very high persuasive value. So a court outside India has passed some judgment on a particular topic, then Indian courts will give a lot of consideration to that judgment, and they will not just brush it aside saying that okay, this is not a judgment of India, so we will not consider it. And if I talk about classification matters, so classification matters in US there is a concept called cross ruling, which is basically like a advanced ruling for classification. So in US it is called cross ruling. So in cross ruling there are a very very big database in US for the classification of a lot of goods. So whenever we are doing any classification matter in India, we also refer to those cross rulings, because in US the market is very big in terms of goods which are being produced. So in a lot of goods for a lot of goods or services you might not find any judgment in India, but in US cross ruling database you will find a lot of those rulings which will be very relevant to you and which can help you a lot. So that is how you basically see the judgments and build the basis for any case which you are arguing. And now we come on to the actual drafting part. That how do you draft? What are the points you have to take care in mind when you are drafting a particular appeal? So the ground, first of all, the you have to prepare the grounds of appeal. That okay, these are the 5, 7, 10, 15 grounds which I want to give in my appeal. So first of all, there can be multiple grounds. So on a particular issue like 2A versus 3B, you can have a n number of different grounds, alternate grounds, which are not dependent on each other. So I can argue it on the point that there is no provision in GST law before January 2022. Then I can argue on the point that it was impossible for me to check that whether the supplier has paid tax on it. So, and there is this provision called lex non cogit ad impossibilia, which basically means that law cannot ask you to do something which is impossible. So it was impossible. It is impossible for any recipient to coordinate with all its supplier and to get them uh, to file their GSTL1 or amend their GSTL1. Then, especially in 1718, there was no 2A available at the in the portal itself. That 2A became available for the first time in May 2018 or June 2018. So in 1718, when that 2A was not available to the recipients, so how were they supposed to take credit on the basis of 2A? So later on, how can the department issue a notice saying that whatever the credit you have taken, that is not coming in your 2A? In 1718, that 2A was not itself available. So that way you can have a multiple grounds for for a single issue which is being raised by the department. So all those grounds you can mention as alternate grounds in your appeal. So first you can take a primary ground and all the other grounds will be the alternate grounds. Then you should also mention a name of the ground. So every ground which you are making, there should be a short and simple heading to give you an indication, okay, that what is it which you are writing in this ground. Because when you are drafting a appeal on a very complex issue or there are multiple issues in a single notice or a single order, then even the appeal becomes very big. So in a lot of cases we have seen where the appeal goes into 50 pages, 60 pages, 100 pages. So when you are dealing with such a large appeal document, then those headings become very important, because otherwise you will also lose track of what is mentioned in the appeal. So when we have those headings readily available, that becomes very convenient, because then you don't have to read the whole appeal to see what was the ground you were taking. Just by reading the heading, you will get a good idea that okay, this is what I wanted to write. So when you are appearing before the authorities to explain the matter, so you can just refer to those headings. Or better yet, you can also prepare a synopsis. So this is what a lot of advocates do, or a lot of chartered accountants do, is to prepare a short synopsis. So let's say I have an appeal which is running into 50 pages or 60 pages or 70 pages. So when I am going for hearing before the appellate authorities or before the tribunal, it is not possible for me to go through those 50, 60 pages in front of them. So, as a prudent practice, what do the professionals do? They make a short synopsis. So, it can be 1 page, 2 page, 3 page, 4 page, which will basically contain all the major grounds, name of the major judgments, major legal grounds, major appeal, major relief which has been asked. So, that will be in a very short format, because that is just to give me an idea who is arguing before the authorities that, okay, these are the grounds which I am taking, these are the primary grounds, these are the alternate grounds, this is the relief I'm asking for. So all this will be very, very briefly summarized in those synopses. So that becomes very helpful when you're going for the hearing. Then these two standard things have to be there when you draft a appeal. So first is additional grounds. So you have to when you are done drafting the appeal, just write a line in the end of the appeal that we reserve the right to take any additional ground at the time of hearing. So basically what that gives you a right that okay, if there may be some ground which you have missed at the time of drafting the appeal, which might come into your mind later, or maybe some judgments comes later on that particular issue. So by writing this line, you are keeping your rights open that any additional ground which you want to take, that you can take at the time of hearing. And next is that you should be granted a hearing. So even though GST law provides that the department has to give you a hearing if they are passing an adverse order, even if you have not asked for it, practically it is always recommended that the right of hearing is mentioned in our appeal, so that department does not get any excuse to deny giving us the hearing. So if it is mentioned in the appeal, then they have to give us those appeal. Otherwise, if they pass an order without giving us a hearing, then that becomes violation of natural justice, which then again makes that order invalid. So those were the major principles which I wanted to discuss. So now on, we will be taking some examples to understand those principles in a better way. So if any participants has any queries, any doubts till now, I think we can take some of those doubts now, and rest of the doubts we can take towards the end of the session. So if anyone has any doubts, they can share the same in the chat box.
Sir, I have got one query. I think I have posted in the chat box.
Yes. So
Yeah.
after assessment under section 73 for a financial year, can there be still same under section 74 or 75? Yes. So basically, what the GST law mandates under section 5 and 6 is, on same subject matter, there cannot be different proceedings. But if in a financial year you have two different issues, so firstly you received a notice under section 73 for 2A versus 3B for financial year 1920. Later on you receive on some different subject matter, maybe on taxability for financial year 1920 itself, but under section 74, so that is allowed. But on same subject matter, they cannot issue again. So 2A, 3B for a particular period, if they have covered, then that cannot be covered in any other notice.
Okay. Then Miss Renu Sharma has raised her hand, so we have allowed her to speak. Ma'am, you can unmute from your end. We have allowed that.
Yeah, sir. Hello, sir. My
Yeah,
voice is
very
clear.
nice. Yes, yes, you are clear.
Sir, I just want to ask one question. The department has issues notice under section 73, and the jurisdiction has dropped the proceedings against the same. Now we received the summon regarding the same. Then what should I do in this case?
So, Renuti, usually summons when they are issued, they are not on the any particular subject matter, because summons is a very initial stage. So,
They are describing some supplier detail,
hmm,
and in the show cause notice in the order summary they have declared the client detail also. They are similar. The details are similar.
ma'am, summons are usually considered a different proceedings, because in summons, if they are describing some particular suppliers, so that
Okay.
most probably means that there is something wrong with those particular suppliers. So maybe their registrations were cancelled or they were declared bogus, or maybe
Mhm.
some similar issue. So that usually comes under the domain of intelligence-based action. So
Yeah.
that is within the power of the department to raise again.
सो सर व्हाट शुड आई डू? मतलब मैंने अब वहाँ पे हमारे डिपार्टमेंट ने प्रोसीडिंग्स ड्रॉप कर दी हैं, अब समन्स आया है उन्हीं क्लाइंट्स के अगेंस्ट, तो हम ऑफिसर्स को क्या और क्लैरिफिकेशन दे सकते हैं उसके बारे में सर, कि
You
हम
can
क्या?
you can submit a letter to them saying that your audit has already been done and it has been
Okay.
cleared by the department, but more likely than not, the summon proceedings will continue, and you will have to give those documents again, because they are a
Okay.
separate proceedings altogether.
कि सर अदर और कोई डॉक्यूमेंट्स हम फर्दर हमारे पास है नहीं जो हमने समन्स के लिए दिए, मतलब सॉरी शोकोस के लिए दिए सेक्शन 73 में, सेम डॉक्यूमेंट्स ही हमारे पास अभी प्रेजेंट है, अवेलेबल है, तो उसके अलावा और हम क्या उनको दे सकते हैं? जैसे मैंने इनवॉइस दे दिया, लेजर दे दिया, ईवे बिल्स के डिटेल्स दे दिए, और हम क्या दे सकते हैं सर उन्हें?
No, whatever they have asked in the summons, that has to be given.
ओके, वी शुड मीट देम फर्स्ट.
Yes. So they must have given a particular date for recording the statement. So you should give all the documents and ask the client to go for the recording of his statement.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we have another Venu sir, you can unmute at your end, sir. We have uh, allowed you.
Audible? Yeah. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Mohit sir and Ganesh ji, both are our members also from taxation group. Okay. Warm welcome. The seminar was well and good. I have a query about section 73. Okay. There is a little controversy also in my question also, because in sir Mohit sir, in a notice there are three parts. One is tax amount, another is penalty amount, other is interest amount. Okay. These are the cumulative factors in a 73 notice. As regards a customer is concerned, when he had paid within 30 days, the 30 days in such a way that tax amount is paid, interest amount and penalty is not paid because of his contingency or whatever be the thing, financial conditions, whatever be the thing. Certain arguments are going on that penalty is liable if interest is not being paid. Certain people argue that it is not liable because the tax is already paid. The penalty is not liable after 30 days. So this controversy is there, and litigations or whatever be the outcome has not been received from any part, because it is a now it is in a what to say in a starting stage also, even though 6-7 years had been gone. What is your opinion, sir? What is your opinion about charging penalty after 30 days, but before interest being interest not paid, but tax had been paid? What is your opinion, sir?
So, sir, if we see the language of section 73, that language is very clear. It clearly says that the tax and interest has to be paid within 30 days of the show cause notice to get the penalty drop. So in my view, the interest has to be paid. So if it was a suo motu payment before even the department came, then maybe we can take this ground that only interest has to be paid. But if that payment was made by on basis of observations made by the department, then definitely tax and interest both has to be paid within 30 days to get the penalty waiver.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ganesh ji. Thank you, Mohit
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you, Venu sir.
So,
Another query is from Rakshit Verma, sir. So, yes, Rakshit Verma, sir, you can unmute from your end and speak, sir.
Hello,
yes,
am I audible?
yes, you are audible.
Yeah. Just wanted to know that since during the adjudication proceedings of Section 73, we deposited certain amount through DRC 03. However, the authority never recorded it in its final order. So now we are filing the appeal. But the thing is that while filing appeal on the GST portal, it asks for 10% of a pre-deposit.
So that is a very common issue these days, and that is also covered in later part of the session. But the
Okay.
basic solution in that case is to file a manual appeal. And in the 53rd GST Council meeting, the government has also taken cognizance of this issue, and they are going to come out with a mechanism to deal with this situation also.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So Ganeshanji, I think rest of the queries we can take up after the end of the session, because I think there are a lot of people who have raised their hand. So
Yeah,
maybe
sure,
we
sure.
can wrap up the session quickly, and then we can take up queries of all the participants.
Fine, sir, fine.
Hello.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So we'll just quickly wrap up the session, and then we can have the queries of all the participants.
Hello. Sir, I am Selvam.
So, Selvakumar, sir, initially he has raised a query now. So, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Kumar.
Sir, I have received the notice for the financial year 18, but we have replied the same for the notice, and after that they are not considered the same. They have sent this notice. They have not considered my reply. but we have verified all the purchases that have been reflected in the 2A. What we shall do now?
So that notice earlier which you received, that was before the show cause notice.
No.
Yes,
Now
I
we have
think
received.
Silva sir has posted his query in the chat box also. Sir, same you want to ask, right? That I'll read out the query. I have received a notice for financial year 18-19. We have replied the same, but they have not given opportunity for hearing and send the notice under section 73 as per first notice. Now what we shall do?
They have sent the notice as per the first they have received. I have received. They have not considered what I have replied the same. And we have also verified that all the input have been updated in GST.
So, Mr. Kumar, usually show cause notice is considered as the first opportunity given by the department to put forth your case. So even if you have not been given a proper opportunity to present your case or to give your documents, then you can give those reply at the time of filing show cause, at the time of giving reply to the show cause notice. So then the department is bound to consider that reply and accordingly pass an order. There has been a few judgments of one or two high courts wherein they have said that proper opportunity has to be given before show cause also. But the generally accepted principle is that if no proper opportunity has been given in before show cause, then the department can give such opportunity at the time of show cause notice.
Okay, okay, that's right.
So now I think we can move ahead with the session.
Right, sir. So yeah, subsequently we'll take at the end of the session, remaining queries will take up, sir.
Yes. So a lot of these things we have already covered. So these are maybe these 3-4 issues we are taking up as an example to explain the principles which we discussed in the earlier part of the session. So let's say the assessee receives a notice for 2A versus 3B mismatch. So the first thing which has to be seen are the facts, that what is the reason for that mismatch, whether there has been non-payment by the supplier, whether there is a mismatch, whether invoice might be coming in some subsequent 2A or it might be reversed in some subsequent 3B. So that complete factual position has to be established. Then we also have to see what period it pertains to, because if you see specifically 2A versus 3B, the law has changed a lot of times in past 7 years. So what is the specific period for this issue is pertaining to, that also becomes very relevant because the law for that period is going to be different from what the law is today. Then what is the type of ITC on which such questions has been raised? Because if it is the type of ITC on availed on imports or RCM, then we have a circular number 123 of 2019 where it is mentioned that rule 36 sub rule 4, which basically puts that limit of 20%, 10%, and 5%, now 0% on 2A credit. So that rule is not applicable on imports and RCM. Then we have seen, you must have also have seen a lot of notices on matching of 3B versus table 8A of GSTR 9. And in a lot of cases, the figure which is coming in table 8A does not match with the figure of 2A itself. So which are basically supposed to be same figures. So table 8A should always match with GSTR 2A. That is the basic procedural check on the GST portal. But in a lot of cases, they do not match. So, legally speaking, there is no provision in GST law which even remotely suggests that there should be a table 8A of GSTR 9 and that should match with 3B, and on difference, the department can raise a demand. The provision which are there, and that is also with effect from January 2022, is that the ITC has to come in GSTR 2A. So that complete basis of this notice of 8A versus 3B is completely baseless. There is no legal validity of such kind of notices. So any such kind of notices which you are facing, you can obviously try to do reconciliation as much as possible and give a proper reply. But even if there is some genuine mismatch or actual mismatch, the department does not have power to issue demand based on this particular mismatch. And then other relaxations also we have to see. So because different period, different laws. So in that, COVID also plays a very important role, because during COVID, during the first wave and the second wave, some special relaxations were also given by the government. So when we are dealing with this 2A versus 3B issues, we also have to see those relaxation which came in the time of COVID. So that also becomes a larger ground when we are dealing with any sort of matter, because there are a lot of amendments or a lot of reliefs was given by the government during that COVID period, and Supreme Court also took suo moto cognizance and extended the time limits for 2 years. So that extension is also there. So all those provisions has to be kept in mind when we prepare reply on any issue which specifically came during the COVID period. So then next is the interest part. So see, right now we have only dealt with the tax part of any issue, but then next part is always interest and penalty. So uh, whether coming in late in 2A calls for an interest. So let's say there is a particular invoice which was availed by the assessee in July 2017, but it came in 2A of the assessee in September 2017. So in a lot of cases we have seen where the department is raising interest based on this delay. So if we see the GST law, it nowhere provides that the invoice has to come in the same month to claim the ITC. Even when the department has come out with its own circular that even if the credit is not coming in 2A, still it can be availed if there is a certificate by the supplier. So if by that using that analogy itself, if an invoice is coming in 2A, then that also satisfy the circular in an indirect way. So even if it is coming late, then that should not matter. Similarly, what is the rate of interest? So in 2A versus 3B, whether the rate will be 18% or 24%, that is a very, very big confusion. Now it has been settled to a great extent, but earlier there was a very big confusion in the market that what is the rate of interest which has to be there. So whether it is 18% or 24%. So now the government has retrospectively amended section 50 subsection 3 to provide that the rate of interest will be 18% with effect from 1st July 2017. Then again, now that issue is settled, that interest is only payable if the ITC has been utilized. If the ITC has only been availed and it has been lying in your electronic credit ledger, then no interest can be demanded on that particular ITC by the department. And for that credit ledger balance, the balance of all the heads which can be cross-utilized has to be seen. So if you are seeing some excess availment of IGST, then you can see the total balance of IGST plus CGST plus SGST. If you're seeing some excess availment in CGST head, then you can see the balance of IGST plus CGST. SGST is not allowed in that case because CGST and SGST are not allowed to be cross-utilized for each other. So for CGST, you can see IGST plus CGST. Similarly, for SGST, you can see IGST plus SGST. So then this is just a basic table depicting the limits which are there. So up to 9 October 19, there were no limits as regard the 2A. Then 9 October 2019, first time rule 36(4) came into the force. So that was 20%. Then January 20, it was reduced to 10%, then subsequently to 5%. And then from January 22 onwards, it was reduced to 0. And there was also confusion that whether 2A has to be seen or 2B has to be seen. So from January 22, they have made it clear that it has to be GST at 2B only. But before that, there was no clarity in the law. So in my humble view, any of the statements 2A or 2B can be taken by the taxpayer based on what is most beneficial for them because there was no clarity in the law. Then we have some judgments in the case of Suncraft Energy by Honorable Calcutta High Court, wherein they have said that ITC cannot be denied to the recipient just because it is not coming into it. The department has to first investigate the supplier, then they can come back to the recipient. And SLP filed against this judgment has been rejected by the Supreme Court, but that does not mean that the judgment has become law of the land because the Supreme Court has not affirmed the judgment. So that is also a very big distinction which we have to see, that when an SLP is rejected at the admission stage by the Supreme Court, that is different from affirming the judgment by the Supreme Court. And during while they were rejecting this SLP, the Supreme Court has specifically mentioned that one of the reasons they are rejecting is because the amount is very small. So again, this issue is bound to go up again in the Supreme Court, maybe in some other matter where the amount is higher. Then we also have the judgment of cargo traders, again by Honorable Calcutta High Court, wherein they have said that ITC cannot be denied to genuine buyers if the GST number of supplier is cancelled retrospectively. Then another issue is section 16(4), which is very common. So if the GST 3B is filed after the due date of September of next financial year. So for example, the 3B of financial year 2021 is filed on 31st December 2021. So in that case, the department is issuing a notice on the ground that you're not allowed to avail ITC because the 3B is filed after the allowed time limit. So even though in this 53rd GST Council meeting, they have come up with a amnesty scheme for first 3 years, if I recall correctly, for 17-18 to 19-20. So they have come up with the amnesty scheme, but keeping that apart from the time being, and coming on to the legal issue here. So one of the basic issues in this proposition is, so let's say I am in July 2024. So let's say I want to file a GSTR 3B today. I have 100 rupees liability, I have 80 rupees ITC, and 20 rupees I have to pay through my bank account. But I don't have those funds in my bank account. So I want that I will pay those 20 rupees later with interest and penalty, whatever is there. And this 80 rupees I want to pay through credit. But if I want to file my GSTR 3B and I put 100 rupees in the liability column, 80 rupees in the ITC column, the portal does not allow me to file my return until and unless I pay that 20 rupees balance through my bank account. And nowhere in GST law it is mentioned that uh, the amount has to be paid while filing 3B. The GST law only provides that the due date of payment will be the due date of 3B. So interest has to be paid if the payment is made late. But it nowhere provides that I have to make the payment at the time of filing 3B. So what happens, because I'm not able to pay that 20 rupees today, I am not able to file my GST 3B, and I am not even able to take the ITC of that 80 rupees which I was entitled to. And later on after, so if you are sitting in July 24, so let's say in December 2025, I am able to arrange those funds and I want to file my 3B. And then the department comes to me and says, now you cannot avail that 80 rupees ITC because the time limit of November has 30th November 2025 has expired. So that cannot be done because I wanted to file my GST 3B, but I was not able to do so because of a restriction which is put by the department directly on GST portal without any provision in the law. And then when I'm trying to file, then they are denying me that ITC, saying that now you're not allowed as per the law. So these two things cannot go hand in hand. So because on this ground, a lot of writ petitions, a lot of appeals are being filed to the high courts. A lot of high courts have also admitted such issues. We also have one favorable judgment by TVL, KVN, HP Gas Gramin Vitran by Honorable Madras High Court, wherein ITC was even allowed on this ground, but there is a contradicting judgment also. So at present, this is a very, very gray area. So let us see how the courts conclude this issue. But at least for the past period now, there has been an amnesty scheme which is being announced in this 53rd council meeting. So that will hopefully put a close to a lot of pending litigation. Then next very common issue is 1 and 3B mismatch. So they are also like the principles which we discussed earlier. So first you have to see the actual reason for that mismatch. So if a particular invoice is declared in GSTL1 but not in 3B, so what is the reason? Whether any actual supply has taken place, it may be a clerical error that instead of 10 has been put in GSTL1, or maybe GSTL1 tax has been paid less but later on paid fully. So what is the actual reason for this kind of mismatch? And then the legal questions which comes is, so let's say I am a supplier, Mohit Gupta. I declared some invoice in GSTL1. but there was no actual supply that was declared by mistake, and later on the time limit got over, so I was not able to amend my GSTR1, but I corrected it in GSTR9. Or in second case, let us assume that I did not even correct it in GSTR9, and obviously tax was not paid in GSTR3 because that was not actual supply, and that is also reflected in the books of accounts, audited books of accounts of Mohit Gupta, wherein the tax paid is as per GSTR3B. The revenue is as per GSTR3B. So, can department demand tax from me just on the ground that I have declared some particular supply in GSTR1, but I have not paid tax, so I have to pay? So, in my view, strictly no. Because for GST law to have any levy, first it has to come through charging section. So, charging section, section 9 clearly says that there has to be an intrastate supply or interstate supply for tax to be paid. But if there is some due to some any reasons, clerical mistake or any other reason, some wrong declaration is made in GSTR1, that does not mean the department gets the right to collect tax from the supplier, because the levy of section 9 is not attracted, that is not satisfied. So that is also something which you have to see in these kind of notices, that okay, just because there is a mismatch does not automatically mean there is a liability. We have to first see what is the actual law, what is the exact provision under which department is trying to create a liability. Then we have a very good judgment recently. I think it was pronounced in January month only. Iker Motors Limited by Honorable Madras High Court, wherein they have said that. So basically, what happened in this case is the due date of 3B is 20th. So the assessor deposited the balance in its electronic cash ledger on 20th, but the 3B was actually filed after a few days, maybe after 3 days, 4 days. So the department was asking for interest for this 3-4 days on the ground that payment of tax is only considered on that date when 3B is actually filed. So even if you have deposited cash in your electronic cash ledger, it will not be considered as payment till the time 3B is filed. So in that case, the High Court has given a favorable order saying that when the amount is deposited in the cash ledger, the interest liability of interest will stop. And now the government has also accepted this recommendation, and in its 53rd council meeting, they have accepted this principle, and they will soon come out with a circular or maybe some amendment in the law to give effect to this particular judgment. Then a retrospective cancellation. So again, a very, very common issue. I think in every audit, every scrutiny cases, department is doing. One of the issues they're checking is how many of the supplier of a particular SSC have their registrations cancelled retrospectively and to deny their ITC. So therein also one very important aspect which you have to see is what is the exact allegation which is levied by the department. So in some cases, the department alleges that the supplier is fake and you have not taken any goods at all. So accordingly, the department has to draft the facts and collect the evidences. But in a lot of cases, department is having a very, very plain allegation that your supplier has their registration cancelled retrospectively, and therefore you're not eligible to avail ITC. They are not questioning the existence of the supplier. They are not questioning my eligibility to avail credit. So in those kind of cases, we have a judgment of Gargo traders, which we discussed earlier, wherein they have clearly said that in the case of retrospective cancellation, the ITC of recipient cannot be denied by the department. But in case there is an allegation of bogus supply, then that goes into another domain. So first of all, we have to see what kind of exact allegation is levied by the department against the taxpayers. Then these are some other common issues on which a lot of notices usually come. So if there is some common, so if some exempt supply has been declared in GSTR1 or 3B or GSTR9, so what basically department does is they take the complete ITC which is declared in 3B and they treat it as common ITC and calculate the reversal under Rule 42, which is not the correct practice, because as per Rule 42, there is a proper procedure which has to be followed. So first the ITC has to be categorized in T1, T2, T3, T4, C2, and then only on the C2 portion the reversal has to be calculated. So in those kind of notices, again, you have to check your facts first, derive the figures, derive the correct correct reversal. In a lot of cases, there is no reversal at all because exempt supply may pertain to the interest income or maybe MIS license sale income on which there is no reversal required. So those kind of cases are there. Then there are cases of 26 AS versus GST return mismatch. So again, you have to see into the facts of the case and see what is the reason for those mismatch. So, similar way, there are a lot of issues. So this is again a very indicative list. This is not an exhaustive list. So any issue which you face from the department, you first have to go and see what is the exact facts of the case, what is the series of the documentation which has been given by the department between the taxpayer and the department, what is the provisions of the law, what is the jurisprudence, and after that you come on to then you form an opinion that okay, what is the actual position, then you advise the client, and after that you go into the drafting part and actually start the drafting. So then these are some of the common cases wherein to understand the difference between section 73 and 74. So section 74 basically comes into play only when there is an allegation of fraud or suppression or willful misstatement. But how do we distinguish whether a particular case falls in section 73 or 74? So these are some of illustrative cases. Again, this is not an exhaustive list that has to be seen on a case-to-case basis, but this is just an indicative list of the cases where the department cannot invoke section 74. So first is any genuine interpretational issue. So even if the assessee was liable to pay some tax, but the assessee was under the genuine impression that he is not liable to pay tax, or he was liable to get the refund or maybe to avail that ITC. He was under that genuine impression, then he is not liable to pay penalty under section 74. So some of the things which can be used to substantiate that there was a genuine impression in the mind of the client is if there are contradicting judgment of High Court. So this 16(4) issue, they are contradicting judgment of High Court. So basis that we can definitely see that that was a genuine interpretational issue, because if High Courts cannot agree on a specific point, how was assessee supposed to have a clarity on that particular law point? Similarly, contradicting tribunal judgment, or if we have gotten a favorable order on the same issue from the department in some other period. So maybe in previous period we got a favorable order. Later on they raise the issue again. So at least if department has accepted our ground once, then that also means there is a genuine interpretational issue. Coming to the second point, so if the facts have already been informed to the department earlier, so because the penalty can only be levied by the department when there is suppression from the department. So if department is already aware of the facts, then it cannot allege suppression. So for that reason, whenever client is taking a litigative call, we always suggest the client to have a simple letter deposited into the department informing the facts of the case and the treatment you are taking, so that later on department cannot allege fraud, because then they are already in knowledge of those facts. And subsequent period FCN. So obviously once SCN comes from a particular period, let's say for 2021, then for subsequent period, the because the department now already knows the facts, so for subsequent period they cannot issue the show cause notice under section 74. Then it is a HSN classification. So mostly this is a accepted principle by the court that HSN classification is a genuine interpretational issue because it is a very technical topic. So assessee are bound to make mistakes. So just because in 12% or 18% instead of 18, assessee has paid 12 because of incorrect HSN code. So that does not mean that was deliberate. Most likely than not, that is an interpretational issue. Then revenue neutrality. So let's say RCM transaction, I was liable to pay some tax and avail the ITC, but I did not do so. So even if I had paid RCM, I would have availed the ITC. So that means there is a revenue neutrality. So penalty should not be levied. Obviously, tax and interest cannot be waived on the ground of revenue neutrality, but penalty can be levied. Then another important ground is proper disclosure in financial statements. So let's say there was some income on which I was liable to pay GST, but I thought it was exempt and I did not pay the amount. But that income is properly disclosed in my audited financials, which is communicated to GST department at the time of 9C as well as income tax department at the time of audit, and which is also available publicly on MCA portal if you are a limited company. So in those cases, the courts have repeatedly held that the assessor is not trying to hide anything. Because if it wanted to hide, then it would not have disclosed this in its financial, which is a publicly available information. So in that case also, fraud cannot be alleged. So we'll just wrap up the session in next 5 minutes or so, and then we can take up the queries. So another very important concept is payment under protest. So what does it mean? It basically means payment of a tax amount without admitting the allegations of the department. So what is the purpose of such payment? So let's say there is a department has come to the SSC and they have levied some, uh, they have raised some issue that okay, this particular ITC you have availed is block credit, so you are not eligible to take ITC. And the assessor is not sure whether the credit is blocked or not, so assessor wants to fight. But let's say that litigation takes 3 years, 4 years, 5 years to get settled. So in that case, the interest will keep on increasing. So to save that interest cost, there is this mechanism called payment under protest. So in this case, what assessor does is it can pay the tax amount without under protest. That means it will not accept the liability and it will ask the department to continue the litigation. So later on, if the assessee wins the litigation, he will get back the refund amount. If he does not win, then he has already deposited the tax, and any balance interest or penalty, any balance amount which is liable to pay, that he'll pay at the time of closure of those appeal. So what is the mechanism? So this concept of payment under protest, you will not find anywhere codified in GST law. But nevertheless, that is a very, very important concept in any tax law, be it indirect tax, be it income tax law. That is a very important concept. So how do you make this payment under protest? So any payment you want to make, you have to give a letter of protest to the department, just a very simple one-pager letter. But in your own language that okay, this is the issue, and just to safeguard our interest and everything, we are making this payment under protest. Please issue us a show cause notice. Just a very normal simple letter you can submit to the department in your own language, but the term under protest should definitely come in that letter, because otherwise it becomes very ambiguous. Then this letter can be given before payment or after payment. So it is better if you give along with the payment. But if you miss to give to the department, then it can be given later on also. Then how to make the payment on the portal? So payment will be made through DRC3, but the reason for payment will not be selected as 73.5 or 74.5. It has to be selected as the other. And in the remarks column, you have to mention under protest. And in the attachment column, then you can also upload the letter of protest. And in case, let's say you have paid this amount, but department is not undertaking any proceedings, he has kept its mouth shut and not issued any show cause notice to you. So maybe you can send them 2 or 3 reminder letters to ask them to give you a show cause notice and start the litigation process. But if they does not do so, then you can directly file a refund application saying that that amount was paid under protest, but the department has not issued a show cause notice. So that means the department has accepted the position of the assessee, and now they should give the refund of the amount paid by the assessee. The next important issue is the pre-deposit. So pre-deposit, one major issue which used to be there is whether it can be paid through ITC. So I think earlier that used to be under litigation, but now it has by and large been settled by the courts as well as the government that it can be paid through ITC. Then another important question which comes up is, which was also raised, I think, by Rakshit ji, that the DRC3 has already been filed before filing of the APL 01. So maybe it was filed for the 10% pre-deposit amount, or maybe it was paid for the 100% of the amount. So in that case, the APL 01 does not let the assessee proceed unless and until at the time of APL 01, assessee makes the pre-deposit payment. So in that case, practically what we are doing right now is filing a manual appeal before the department, giving the reason that the portal is not allowing, even though we have made the payment earlier in DRC3, and then the complete proceedings goes offline. But now in 53rd Council meeting, they have come up with the recommendations, and soon they are going to implement some system on GST portal to take care of this issue also. And another important question which usually comes is if the assessee wants to make some under protest payments. Uh, so can it be made at the time of filing appeal? So yes, it can be made, and in that case, it is recommended that it is made in the form of pre-deposit. So instead of 10% amount, you can deposit the 100% amount as pre-deposit. So later on, it will be easier to get the refund because comparatively, it is easier to get a refund of pre-deposit than any other payment when you win the appeal. Then last question, last topic for the day is how to when to file a writ petition. So that is a very common question these days, especially since tribunal has not been set up in GST. That if there is some adverse order and the assessee wants to go for a writ petition, so in what cases can he go for the writ petition directly before the jurisdictional high court? So these are some of the grounds. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just an indicative list. But some of the grounds where assessee can go for the writ petition is when no alternate remedy has been available in the law. So if there is some order passed by the authority and there is no provision in the law to file appeal against such order, in that case, assessee can go for the writ petition. Then filing after condonable delay period. So let's say the time limit for filing appeal is 3 months plus 1 month. But let's say the assessee has missed the time limit of 3 months as well as the subsequent 1 month. Then the assessee can go to the High Court to get this delay condoned. Usually, as a matter of practice, High Court does not delay such condone unless and until there is some very genuine and extraordinary circumstances at the end of the recipient. But High Court can use its discretionary power and give this relief to the assessee. Then if there is a challenge to the provision of a statute, so if you are alleging that some particular section of CDST Act is ultra vires the Constitution. So, like in section 16(2)(c), which says that supplier has to pay tax to the government in order for the recipient to be eligible to avail ITC for the 2A 3B matter. So, a lot of people have gone to the High Court and challenged that provision itself, saying that that is unconstitutional because that is hindering the trade of businessmen. So if you're challenging any act, any section of the act or any rule under the rules or any notification, then you can directly approach the High Court because High Court only has the power, High Court and Supreme Court, to strike down those provisions. That is not in the power of any authority below them. So you can directly approach them. Then next is when the authorities are acting in excess of their jurisdiction. So let's say some arrest has been made by an officer, by an inspector, or by a superintendent, but they are not authorized under GST law to do so. Or you have received notice from a GST department outside your jurisdiction who are not allowed to issue notice to you. So in all those cases where the authorities are acting in excess of what is allowed to them under GST law, in those cases you can straight away go to the High Court. Then if there has been a gross violation of natural justice, so where it is very, very clearly evident from the documents of the case that the department has not considered your submissions, department has not given you enough opportunities to present your case. So in all those cases, you can go directly to the High Court. Then you have not receiving any response from the department despite repeated follow-up. So like the case we discussed in case of under protest payments. So you made the payment, you asked the department to issue a show cause notice, but they have not done so. So in those cases, you can also directly approach the High Court. But again, these are just some of the cases wherein you can directly approach the High Court. There are a lot of other cases where you can approach the High Court, and ultimately, at the end of the day, that is on the discretion of the High Court. So if the High Court thinks that is a genuine case worthy of being heard, then they will entertain the petition. Otherwise, they will dismiss it. So with this, I would like to conclude my session for the day.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have a query. Can a new case law not previously cited in the appeal filing be submitted during the appeal proceeding?
Yes, definitely. So like I mentioned during the session, you should also mention in your appeal that you reserve the right to make additional submission. So in those additional submission, you can also cite the new judgments.
Okay. And sir, here we have a participant who want to ask their query. Gopal Kumar sir has raised his hand. Gopal sir, you can unmute at your end. We have allowed you and ask the question.
Yes, Mr. Gopal.
Hello, sir. Follow all of you first. Very good evening, sir. I know you, Mohit sir, very well. I have a query, sir. May I ask, sir?
Yes, yes.
मेरा क्या एक जो क्लाइंट है उन्होंने एक उसकी मूवमेंट होती है डिलीवरी चलान पे, ओके। तो हरियाणा से तमिलनाडु गई, मूवमेंट हुई, तो हरियाणा तमिलनाडु में उसने 68 के सेक्शन 68 में इंटरसेप्ट के फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन किया उसने, ओके। और ईवे बिल जो जनरेट हुआ तो वो गलती से सप्लायर का एड्रेस डल गया और हमारा जीएसटी डल गया, रॉन्गफुली डल गया, ठीक है। तो वो उस इशू को उसने एडमिट नहीं किया। सेम मूवमेंट पे उसने क्या किया, हमारे वेयर हाउस के बाहर से पकड़ा उसने, वहां से उठा के सीज करके ले गया और उसने MOB 01 MOB 02 दे दिया, ठीक है। जब MOB 02 दिया तो सेक्शन 29 का दिया, 129 का, ठीक है। 129 में दिया, लेकिन उसने क्या किया, 129 में देकर कहा कि इमीडिएटली पेमेंट करो, अदरवाइज आपका जो है मतलब गाड़ी को जब्त कर लेंगे, फिर छोड़ेंगे नहीं। हमारा लॉस हो रहा था, इसको वजह से हमने पेमेंट करना पड़ा। और पेमेंट भी किस में करवाया, IGST में करवाया वो, ना कि CSGST में करवाया। 5 लाख से वो करवाया पेमेंट IGST में, वो भी DRC 03 के थ्रू। अब उसने मुझे रिलीज ऑर्डर दिया MO 05 और उसमें उसने ये मेंशन किया है कि जो सप्लायर हैज नॉट इशू द टैक्स इनवॉइस अनलेस आई एम नॉट, मतलब कि हम डिलीवरी चलान पे जब मूवमेंट कर रहे हैं बिना गुड्स मूवमेंट कुछ में को सेल्स ऑफ कंसिडरेशन ऑफ सेल है ही नहीं, उसमें सिर्फ स्टॉक ट्रांसफर हो रहा है, तो सेल नहीं हो रहा। एक हमारे एक वेयर हाउस से दूसरे वेयर हाउस में ट्रांसफर हो रहा है, ठीक है। वो खाली पैलेट से खाली डब्बे हैं, उसमें कोई गुड्स वगैरह नहीं है। तो उस केस में क्या हम अपील पे जा सकते हैं क्या?
हाँ, उस केस में यू कैन गो फॉर अपील।
हाउ कैन सर, कि ऑलरेडी मैं पेमेंट कर चुका हूँ उसमें।
Yes, already, even if you have made the payment, that does not mean you can go for the, you can't go for the appeal. So whether you have made payment or not, you are entitled to go for appeal. So if you win in the appeal, you will get the refund of the tax you have paid earlier.
तो हमारा केस का क्या क्वेरीज, मतलब क्या बेस क्या होगा? सो बेसिकली मैं ये अंडरस्टैंड नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ। बेसिकली पहला तो मेरी क्वेरी ये है कि इमीडिएट उसने सीज किया और IGST में पेमेंट किया, अनलेस उनको CSGST में पेमेंट करवाना चाहिए था। ये क्वेरी मुझे समझ नहीं आ रही है। दूसरी क्वेरी ये कि 129 में उसको DRC 07 भी इशू करना था, उन्होंने वो इशू नहीं किया। इवन पोर्टल पे भी सबमिट नहीं किया उन्होंने अभी तक, MOB 01 2। तो वेदर हम वेट फॉर द पोर्टल और फाइल टू द अपील विद इन 3 months?
And so that appeal has to be filed against an order. So if the department has not issued an order, then you cannot go for appeal. So first of all, you should follow up with the department to issue the order. Then once they issue the order, then within 3 months, you have to go for the appeal.
तो जो ऑर्डर जो इशू करेंगे ऑनलाइन, तो वो बेसिकली उस डेट से काउंट होगा कि जिस दिन को हमने पेमेंट कर दिया, तो उस डेट से काउंट होगा 3 months का? सर
Date of the order.
डेट ऑफ द ऑर्डर काउंट
Yes.
होगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच सर, थैंक यू।
Thank you.
Okay, so and the next query is from Utkarsh and Associate. Sir, you can unmute your end and ask your query, sir. Utkarsh and Associates.
ये सर मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
Yes, sir, आ रही है।
Yes, Utkarsh ji.
सर मेरी क्वेरी ये है कि एक सेक्शन 65 में सर्च करी है इंस्पेक्टर ने INS 1 के थ्रू, बट उसमें उन्होंने ये पाया कि ना, उनकी रिपोर्ट के अकॉर्डिंग ये था कि ना तो बिजनेस एग्जिस्टिंग था, ना बिजनेस कोई एक्टिविटी परफॉर्म की जा रही थी, जिसके बेसिस पे असेसिंग ऑफिसर ने DRC 7 ऑर्डर इशू किया। इसके अगेंस्ट में अपील भी फाइल्ड है, बट मेरी क्वेरी ये है कि उन्होंने इसमें ASMT 10 उनको जारी करना चाहिए था या नहीं, क्योंकि उन्होंने ASMT 10 नहीं इशू किया था।
नहीं, so what, उन्होंने ऑर्डर किस चीज का इशू किया है? whether the order is for cancellation of registration or for some tax demand?
The first process was the INS 1 is been issued to an inspector to search my client premises. Upon the search, the inspector just put up in his report that the business premises does not exist and the business activity is not being conducted there.
So जो order issue है, what is the order? Order is for cancellation of the registration or some tax demand has been raised.
It has been tax demand.
What ground has been taken for that demand?
उसका ग्राउंड ये था कि बेसिकली इंटेलिजेंस रिपोर्ट थी कि जिसमें एसएससी की तरफ से टैक्स की चोरी की जा रही है, जिसके बेसिस पे इंस्पेक्टर ने अपना इंस्पेक्शन किया। और क्यों एक पंचायत पोर्टल होता है लोकली, हमारा स्टेट लेवल पे है, जिसमें ये मेंशन था कि पंचायत में इनवॉइसेस अपलोड किए जाते हैं जिनका पेमेंट किया जाता है पंचायत द्वारा। तो उसके बेसिस पे असेसिंग ऑफिसर ने ये डिमांड रेज करी कि क्योंकि ये बिजनेस ना तो एग्जिस्ट करता है ना इसकी कोई प्रोमाइसिस है, और इनकी तरफ से जब फिर भी इनवॉइस पुटअप किए जा रहे हैं पंचायत पोर्टल पे, इस बेसिस पे इनके ऊपर इतनी टैक्स डिमांड की जाती है।
So the tax तो already paid है ना, SSC has already paid the tax.
नहीं सर, एसएससी ने पेड नहीं किया था, वो एक्चुअल में एक इन्वेस्टिगेशन के बाद टैक्स डिमांड उतनी बनती है उनकी, जो उन्होंने टैक्स पेड नहीं किया, टैक्स तो शॉर्ट पेड है।
So I think we have to see the documents and understand the case in detail to give an opinion. इतने short time में इतना discuss करके it will not be possible. So
Okay.
maybe we can connect after the session to discuss this case.
ओके। और एक सर मैं ये जानना चाह रहा था कि डीआरसी बने का जो अब एक अमेंडमेंट आ चुका है कि द असेसिंग ऑफिसर इफ he may want to issue a DRC1, so it is a compulsion or not?
So right now it is not mandatory.
Okay. In case of audit,
in any case, right now the provision has made it optional. पहले सर्विस टैक्स में एक्साइज में there were instructions wherein up to a certain above a certain amount this pre-show cause used to be mandatory, but there is no such provision in GST. So in GST, DRC1 is optional.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Utkarsh sir. And Nimesh Agarwal sir has a query.
Yes, Mr. Nimesh.
Nimesh, you can unmute from your end. We have allowed you.
Yeah, hi sir. Sir, my query is regarding audit under section 65 by the department. So, sir, the case is my audit by department has started in the month of April. So they have visited my premises and they are conducting audit. It is going on till date. Means even today they give notice and they come to my premises to conduct audit. So my query here is, number one, so 3 months they get the time to complete the audit. Now my question is, from when shall I count this 3 months? From the initial date or from the time they continue the audit?
So that is a very wide commencement of the audit is defined as the day when the department receives all the document which they have asked for.
Exactly, sir.
So practically what happens is, whenever we say that, okay, this is the date when I have given all the document, department again raises some demand for some other documents and they say that, okay, now the commencement of date has shifted and it will be a later date. So practically that's difficult, but you can see the date when you initial communication which you receive from the department, whatever documents they have asked from you, the date on which you have given all those documents, that date has to be taken as the commencement of the audit.
Now, sir, when they're conducting next audit, they're not giving any list of documents that they need. They are simply saying, to continue the audit, we will be coming at your premises at so and so date. So there are no list of documents in writing that they're giving to us. So we can naturally contest that.
So stop giving if they are not giving in writing to give it, stop, don't give them any documents. Ask them to issue a written notice, then only you will give the document.
Definitely. And sir, in continuation to that, sir, one more thing. Suppose they give us a draft audit report, like that's the procedure. Now I want to know, suppose what is the timeline to issue the final audit report after the draft audit report is given? Is there any timeline prescribed?
No, sir. The timeline prescribed and they have given is for notice and order. For final order, there is a specific timeline, but that happens within a reasonable time.
Okay. And sir, one more last, sorry to interrupt. in the draft audit reports, they give us the draft audit report and we do not reply to it. Suppose we do not reply to it and we finally adjudicate it at the SCN level. So are we at loss somewhere? Like not replying to draft audit report with the audit team, are we at loss somewhere?
So say even if you give a reply at the time of show cause notice, they will consider those not at a loss. But if you give a reply at the time of draft audit report only, you get the chance to conclude the matter.
Sir, by the terms of the ongoing proceedings, we don't find it that it will be dropped, very frankly speaking. So I want to adjudicate this matter at the SCN level or maybe at the appellate level. So can I choose not to reply? Will I be at any loss?
So the only issue will be not at the SCN level, but at the appeal level, because at the time of appeal, you have to deposit a 10% pre-deposit, which can become a significant burden on some.
Agrees.
And if it is not reported, then at tribunal, it is again the next 20%.
Agreed, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so Nimit sir, I think you can connect with sir for more details. Okay, so last query from Manisha Didia, ma'am. So, ma'am, you can unmute yourself from your end and you can ask your question.
Yes, Manisha ji.
Ma'am, can you unmute yourself? Are you able to do? We have allowed you here from here.
Hello. Now I'm able to
Yes,
hear.
Manisha.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sir,
able to hear you.
I want to ask. You have to, but while making a payment, and there is no tab coming for writing anywhere under protest. So how can we produce that we have paid this under protest?
So, Manisha ji, actually your voice is getting cut off a bit. So can you please repeat?
You told that the payment we may pay under the appeal, we can tell them that we are paying this under a protest, right? So where we can mention that we are paying under protest, because on challan we cannot anywhere mention that this amount is paid under protest.
So not on challan, you can mention it on DRC3.
Okay.
So challan is not considered as a payment under GST. You have to set it off to get it counted as a payment.
Ma'am, your queries got cleared or?
No, I'm not able
you
to
lost your
hear.
voice.
Yeah.
Yes.
The sir has said that there is a form called DRC03 in the portal. After you make a payment from GST challan, you will have to offset that payment against DRC03, where there is a tab in a box there where you can mention your comments. You are making payment against so and so document, like that. So in the challan there is no space, but in DRC03 there is a place.
Okay, sir. Noted. Thank you.
Okay, so Mohit sir, this was the last query raised hand by the participant. So thank you for the session. A wonderful session, I would say. Very informative and detailed about how to handle GST appeal in an effective manner. Right from the beginning of the data checking, validation, seeing the notices, and then preparing the appeal, how to go about it, deciding the case, where how best we can present so that our case is presented well and order is getting favorable. So all such things you have presented very well. And so for that, thanks from onlinetaxupdate.com. And we wish Anivesh consultancy also a best of luck. And then thanks to the participant for taking out time and enabling us to share knowledge with you all. So until we come with a new webinar, Thank you from Online Tax Update. Thank you, Mohit sir, once again.
Thank you so much. And if any participant wants to connect with me to discuss any queries, they can contact me at the my mobile number or my LinkedIn ID, which is mentioned on the screen. And a big thanks to the Online Tax Update team.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, participants.
Thank you, everyone.